right now we've got some discussions that are kind of getting underway with the lamas to try and kind of give some input as to what the next cycle of teachings and so on should be. And I've always been one to, I've always emphasized practice. I say, one teaching is great, but with one teaching, there's many practices to stabilize the teaching, because the teaching is so multifaceted that it takes practice and practice and practice to be able to ascertain all the different facets. And if we get teaching after teaching after teaching without practice, it's kind of like, things don't get focused, it remains all these, divergent different ideas all around the same thing. But at the same time, there's not a sense of a purpose or bringing it into oneself, recognizing it within yourself. It remains an intellectualization. What do you think of that? Does that make sense? Curtis, what do you think?
Absolutely. You got to make it real in your life. If it's just an intellectual exercise, or if religion is not integrated into your life, then it's it's not really doing what it's supposed to do, which is to transform you.
It's
That's simple.
Teaching, reading, and practice are all, I think, very, very important. I think that you have to do all three to start to see your life change. If you see what I have to see and what I have seen very slowly, I'm not very far along, is my way of looking at life and my way of reacting to life is changing very slowly, but I've noticed it. But it takes all three elements. You have to practice because you need to not only have the ritual that is incorporated in practice, but you have to have the fellowship of the people with whom you practice. I think the human contact, even though it's virtual right now, really important. And I think the constant reading to reinforce your understanding, even though you're reading the same concepts presented by different writers, different lamas, different khenpos, is very important.
What do you think, Michael? Are you following us now?
No, I'm struggling to find a slot.
Okay. All right. Well, Adrian, what we're talking about right now, what we've been talking about for the past, 5 or 10 minutes was the differences or similarities between ritual, practice, worship, and homage. And that how, how we use them to, approach our spirituality and so on. So, do you have any thoughts on the general topic?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts. So is this strictly related to Buddhism or other?
Not necessarily, because it's kind of universal to spiritual practice, if we can, keep it focused on spirituality.
Right. I guess my thoughts between tell me again the three concepts. I think there were 4 concepts, right? It was practice.
Well, it was worship,
Mm-hmm.
and homage,
and practice,
and then practice and ritual.
Yeah. I think to some point, to some extent, a lot of them are interrelated, but they're different. I think as I've grown up in my way of understanding a lot of the concepts, especially in Buddhism, um, there is the practice has, of course, have grown over the years. And what I've seen in the past um, as being worship, probably right now I see it with different eyes, and I kind of like incorporate that into my practice. I think worshiping is not necessarily in the past I used to see it with bad eyes because to me it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to bow to a deity. But right now I see it's not just about that. It's more about inspiring a sense of humility and humbleness, and just I guess confronting the ego with a higher sense of self, if that makes sense. And it's good to incorporate that into the practice. And homage, I think maybe I would put it probably at the same level, in the sense that you pay homage to yourself, not necessarily a deity. The way that I see it right now. And yeah, what was left? Homage, worship, practice, and
Ritual.
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 And ritual, yeah, the rituals I think are important. That was one of the things that I was thinking about this week, like ritualistic practice, or how things are being done, and just like in a certain way. I think it's very important for a tradition to have its rituals, because that's how the teachings are being passed from teacher to the next generation. And that's how the teachings have their own like strength maintained over the years, over the centuries, I guess. But in the same time, I think that, I don't know, maybe for this century, some of the rituals that have been passed on to us, is there any way that, I don't know, maybe our age, our century, our this days, we might need something new in order to capture the minds and hearts of, I guess, people. But I think definitely rituals are very important in understanding and passing on, and the tradition, the meanings behind it.
So would you all say that there is a that all of these contribute to establishing a firm mindfulness of a purpose?
That's one of the goals of all these things. Simply put, to make us mindful. And I think spiritually mindful, or somehow mindful of the holy, even of the subtle.
The holy, that's a good word. And how much of it, what of those things are any more than others contribute to doubt, or are reflective of doubt, or the antithesis of doubt? Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
Doubt about what exactly?
in building mindfulness, is there something that blocks the mindfulness because of doubt? So if I can use myself for an example, years ago, I would have thought that all the ritualistic stuff that we engage in was, some hocus pocus, and that it was keeping me from building a mindfulness, because I say, oh, I can't go there, I can't go there. So I had a doubt that it was being useful for me. Not specifically in Buddhism, but just generally speaking. I mean, I grew up, in a Jewish environment and Catholic, so I went to church and I went to shul, so I saw both of those
That
things.
just about covers it.
Yeah. And I was put off by both things, as and then as I got into the Buddhism, then I saw these things now being played out in different ways with different rituals and so on. But meanwhile, building to the same, I didn't recognize what it was doing at the time with the Catholic or with the Jewish.
I think to some degree, all of us have doubts when we're starting on the path. And for my own example, when I started, my friend who kind of like got me into this, he was like, just do the practice. If you don't like to say the prayers, don't say the prayers, just do the practice and look at how that works on you. And then if you come to fall in love with the practice, then you can start saying the prayers. Then you can
I
start.
don't understand. How can you do the practice without the prayers? Give me an example of that.
Well,
Shamatha.
I think, right.
Well, I didn't hear what you said then.
Shamatha practice.
Shamatha, yeah, shamatha, meditation, or I think what I was doing in the beginning was just a visualization of like purification practice, and just visualizing myself as either Vajrayana or another deity. But at that time, I was saying the prayers as well. I think that was a good example. I think that kind of like stuck in my mind, because I've seen others being reluctant embracing the practice because of somebody is ringing a bell, or somebody is holding a vajra, or somebody is reciting prayers to some deity that is unknown, or I've just heard about it last year, and now I'm doing a whole practice about it. And I think I've heard lamas as well saying that, well, might as well, sometimes if you don't have time in the day, you can skip the prayers, just do the practice, and just get it done like that.
Well, what do prayers connote to you? What mindfulness do prayers manifest? What would you say to that, Curtis?
Well, there's the praying itself, which is edifying, because you're
Is
thinking.
edifying?
Yeah, I think it's good for you.
What is edifying? I don't know that word.
Well, if I'm praying for good for the world, I'm holding good thoughts. It edifies me.
Sedify? What? I spell that.
Edify.
Oh,
Edify.
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 Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right, I didn't understand what you were saying.
So there's inherently something edifying about prayer, but I think the dimension that's important for almost any person in a religion is the idea that you're actually opening yourself up to something bigger than yourself, deeper than yourself, part of yourself, if you will. But there's a certain element of surrender, letting go of the ego, and opening up to something that's much bigger than you. I mean, you can include it in yourself, but it definitely is getting out of ego territory when you humble yourself and say, I need help. Whoever you're saying it to, however you're saying it.
What do you think of that, Gary?
Well, I think that edify to me means to teach, and which is connected with, obviously, with learning. And when you're doing anything associated with practice, including the prayers, or if just shamatha, you're learning. You're learning. Even in shamatha, you're learning. You're just meditating today. I was learning something about myself. And it was a particularly frenetic day for me to meditate. I remembered something I read. I don't know who wrote it. Some Lama, some Khenpo, that about thoughts. And as I was meditating, there was just a storm of thoughts that kept coming in. And the Lama had said, let your thoughts come and go, just don't have tea with them. I was remembering that as I was making my way through my meditation, which, as opposed to what I would like to have, this emptiness and quietness, things kept intruding in my mind, but I was able to let them go because I had read and I had learned how to handle this type of meditation when it comes upon you. If you don't invite it, it just does. Thoughts come into our mind. I'm not sure that that's responsive to what you were trying to get, but that was what I was thinking about as I heard Curtis talk.
So do you think that these things that we're talking about, and if there's something that I haven't mentioned in regard to this, that these are composite things, they are elements that help build up, a devotion, our practice, our aspiration, that they support one another, but yet they still have like individual functions. You could do one without the other, but if you bring them all together, it really builds something greater than the sum of its parts, to use that expression. Does that
Words
make
have a
it-
lot of overlap,
What's that?
for sure. The words have a lot of overlap. Practice, ritual, worship, homage. Ritual practice, ritual worship practices. The words really work together. I think they're different aspects or attitudes in some sense, but all of them are about religious practices. And to me, to be, I don't mean to sound so theistic, but there's something that about theism or about devotion. It all is a kind of a stance of the ego towards something bigger than the ego.
They're like interlocking parts, Lance. I think that you need all of them to be, to be what you want to be what you're seeking to find the peace and spiritual center that I believe most of us are seeking in Buddhist practice, and most people seek in whatever spiritual practice they engage in, as being they are interlocking parts that help you become centered and focused, and that remind you as life intrudes and challenges you to be something other than what you want to be, reminds you of who you are.
Okay. Adrian, you can have the last word on this. What do you think about that?
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, I think there's a lot of overlap. And probably if we don't have that, there's always going to be something missing and on the path. And I think that there are a lot of groups that, let's say, do a practice, but I think they're missing one of this components that we were talking about, like the rituals, or the homage, or saying the prayers, setting your goals. What is the goal for us as human beings, the ultimate goal, right? Because we all have the relative goal, right, and the ultimate goal, I should say. And I think I would like to keep it that way, on the path, at least. Now that I've seen kind of like how the gears work together, for me, it's much better like that. It's a lot more complex to understand all the intricacies, right? But that's the path. So,
Are we trying to avoid thought? Or are we trying to replace thought?
are you talking about like in meditation?
Well, meditation practice, this whole process.
We're trying to have whatever thoughts we have infused and completely clear expression of the Dharmakaya.
Well, what does that mean? I mean, we got to.
If they're expression of Dharmakaya, then they're always welcome. But if you make them part of something else, then if you're a dualistic nature, then of course they're going to bring with them all the dualistic suffering, and everything that is related to them.
So what do we do with those thoughts? Those dualistic thoughts? Do we suppress them? Do we push them aside?
Definitely, I don't think we should suppress them, because you create more karma in that way. I don't think there is a due. The thoughts are there, so it's just a matter of
You don't cling to them.
recognize. You don't cling to them. You recognize, let them go. Just like Gary said, just like don't have tea with them, right? Is that what you said, Gary? Yeah, just don't have tea with them. Just let him come, let him go. That's it. It's not a matter of replacing it. It's not a matter of suppressing them. It's just a matter of recognizing them and us being aware of the fact that, yes, we are recognizing.
Okay, so it seems like we've come full circle now. So before we move on, I just don't want to not bring Michael into the conversation. Do you have anything you want to add to this? I know you've been hearing it kind of in the background. Is there anything that you want to say about this?
I think all of the components that make up the spiritual constellation in the Mahamudra world, as well as many other like spaces, need to be complementary. They don't have to be complementary, and it's the human being that can turn the components into polarities. But I think the practice, the tradition, the homage, the prayers, they all play a part, because they all speak to a certain part of our humanity. We need to adore. We need to ask. We need to have habits of mind and habits of body, and all of these should be in synergy. They should be in resonance and harmony with each other. And the way that we do that is through intention and practice. With regard to thoughts, the mind, that's what the mind does, or that's what the sentient mind does. So we can observe those and let them rise and let them fall, but that's what happens in mindfulness meditation. In daily life, we have a tendency to need to pay a little more attention to those thoughts, because very often they are the way we productively working with ourselves and our environment. So the challenge is not to go down a rabbit hole, not to elaborate, not to obsess, not to ruminate, and not to entertain thoughts that are unhealthy, unvirtuous, and untruthful. So that's where the labor comes in, sort of filtering. But I think anything that is a product of the human mind, we have to make space for, because our bigger mind can hold it all. Our bigger mind can hold everything. So why shouldn't it be able to hold the thing that our sentient mind just does naturally?
Okay. So in terms of what we've been practicing on Friday nights, the Ngondro, how does all this that we've been talking about, how does this relate to that? Because there's been two aspects of the Ngondro that we've been talking about, and they're two different aspects. So can you relate those? Can you articulate that?
Well, the Ngondro is certainly ritual. There's certainly homage being paid, adoration, devotion, and as with most of our liturgy, in one word or more, there is a lot of prayer, and I think, like we were told when we were first introduced to the Ngondro, that the main practice of the Ngondro is to develop one-pointed mindfulness. And the one-pointed mindfulness is in general and in specific to the Mahamudra path and the nuances of the Vajranyana. So I don't know what the two directives of Ngondro practice are. I probably forgot or never got those.
Anybody else have a comment about that? Answer that question.
I see the practice as laying foundation for everything that needs to be done further, and just bringing the mind to the items of refuge, right? The Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, Bodhisattvas, and it's definitely, like Michael said, just ritualistic, a lot of prayer, paying homage, but the purpose of it is just bringing the mind on focus, just to be focused on the path. That's pretty much how I see it.
Well, aren't there different specific, techniques being used, or focuses of attention, or developing a particular mindfulness by how many Ngondro practices have we been doing?
Recently?
Yeah.
We talking about the
7.
Reiki?
7.
Yes.
What are the 7?
I don't know. I've got them numbered as videos.
I see. Now, well, we've been repeating.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have an answer to this? You know
How
what?
many practices are in the Ngondro?
Okay, how many practices are in the Ngondro?
I'll guess 15.
Bah.
There's a taking refuge, right? It's the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that one?
I'm not sure, Lance.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, there's definitely some Yidon work in there.
Well, that's the deity yoga, right?
Yeah.
No, well, we haven't gotten there yet. All right. So what I'm trying to do is help develop some critical thinking. You know, taking things apart and then putting them back together again, but knowing what you're doing as you're doing it. If you're building a bicycle, there's a time when you're working on the steering column. There's a time when you're working on the rear wheel and the yoke that holds it in place. And there's a time when you're working on the pedals and the gears and so on like that. You're using the same things, the same kind of techniques, the same mechanical ways of doing this, but applying it to different particular parts of the bicycle. So you have to develop a critical thinking of what you're doing as you're doing it. And you have that in front of you, so it makes it relatively easy to be able to visualize that and so on. But when we're doing these practices, it's building a bicycle, but it's building it now, you know, we're building practices, and these are the preliminary practices. The Ngondro are the preliminary practices to condition ourselves, to make ourselves prepared to be able to embark on the Mahamudra practices. So my point is that number one, we're doing the refuge part, which is putting ourselves on the tree, putting ourselves in the lineage, and being mindful of what the lineage is. And then the second part is now we have to purify ourselves to maintain that refuge on the tree. So there's two important parts that we've been working on, was the refuge part, giving up the ego, making ourselves part of this tree, and then the purification to be able to stabilize that and to be able to recognize those doubts and those things that creep into our lives and so on. So my point is here is developing critical thinking. And this is what the beginning part of meditation is all about. When we sit down and say, I'm going to meditate, you know, and maybe you have an idea that it's to clear the mind, but meanwhile, all these thoughts come flooding in and so on. You got to deal with all these thoughts. And that's generally part of the meditation. That's the early part of the meditation. And so we have to know how to compartmentalize that and deal with all of that stuff. It's critical thinking. So I'm just pointing this out because that's what we need to do, is to organize our thoughts more and more and more so we can recognize all these little compartments. And intellectualizing, reading it, and so on, vicariously experiencing it, it all kind of runs together. You know, it becomes this mush that's really hard to separate because, you know, well, I heard this, I read that, somebody said this, somebody said that, you know, but when you begin to practice and you know that you're working on the pedals of the bicycle, or you know that you're working on the rear wheel, or you know you're working on the steering column, it really makes it come home. You can visualize it better. So this is the purpose. So this is the practice. So this is why the practice is so important, because it makes it our own. We are investing our time, and we're seeing the benefits of our intellectualization focused on that particular aspect of the practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I can give an example of, can I give an example?
Sure.
Yeah. So I actually had a really rough day the other day, and I just made a mistake at work, and I was just like I was having a hard time with that. And so, just going back to what we were talking a few minutes before, what do you do with the thoughts? It was a very organic feeling for me because I didn't feel like that in like years, I should say. Um, and I just kind of like, you know, let it all happen by itself without without trying to put too much thought into it. Just let it unfold. Um, and that's kind of like how I, try to bring the practice into it. And then later on, and I don't think that was a mistake or by any chance, but I was in my truck and I just put my head on the wheel like this, and there's Curtis sending me a text, and he said, "If nobody's told you I love you today, there I am." And it just happened, and I was like, that was it. So you're taking refuge in the Dharma, the Sangha, and these things are happening, and I don't think they're random. So hey, Curtis, thank you very much for that. That was definitely, the cherry on the cake for that day for me.
Gary,
Sorry.
I'll send you a dose too.
So that was my example, just kind of like trying to, because I had just very, what do you call that, visceral feeling about what happened that day, and I'm like trying to bring everything that I've learned in the practice on the path, and I'm like expecting for that to, for that pain, suffering to be just kind of like lifted, but it's not always working like that. And I realized it. I was like, okay, you just have to go with it. Just have to deal with it as it comes. That's my take on it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? All right. Well, we don't have a lot of time left, but so I think let's concentrate on either the refuge Ngondro or on the purification Ngondro. Does anybody have a preference?
I do not.
Okay. Then we'll practice the purification part. So what we're establishing is a mind stream. And that's why we do the prayers in the beginning, and then we do the increasing mantras in the beginning, and we do them each time, all the time. Sometimes we cut some shortcuts and everything because we have a limited day or something like that. But generally, that's what we want to do. We want to repeat this over and over again on a daily basis to really establish this mind stream so that we can see it really working and changing and so on. And then we embark, after the increasing mantras, then we embark on the refuge part, and we do some prostrations. Maybe we say, I'm going to do 3 prostrations, or maybe I'm going to do 25, or whatever you have time for and that you want to do. You go through that part, and then you move on to the next part, which in this case would be the purification part. as we get into the other two parts, there's the mandala offering that comes after that, and then there's the guru yoga that comes after that, and you would go through the first two to get to the mandala offering and then get to the guru yoga. So this thing expands to, maybe it starts off as an hour, now becomes 2 hours, and becomes 3 hours, and becomes very easily 4 hours, and so on, to really get the full benefit out of doing these practices. But you're building a mind stream. And then you really see, your life, really changing. You can really feel the transcendence of the plateaus and so on. Okay. So let's go to the Vajrasattva part. Does everybody have that in front of them?
Data yoga booklet.
No, it's this one here.
I've got that one then too.
Okay. Okay, everybody, does everybody have it? Vajrasattva Dorje Sempa, meditation and meditation for purification practice. Okay. So let's take turns. So Gary, if you'll begin, if you will read the first page of the introduction, and Curtis, you read the second page of the introduction. Okay.
You're talking about starting on page 3, right?
No, I'm talking about starting on page 1 of this text.
Oh, that. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
So we're skipping ahead because we took up a lot of time talking about
Okay.
this other stuff, which was very important.
Okay. So you want me to read page 1 then?
Please.
Introduction to the Vajrasattva meditation practice. Generally speaking, virtuous and non-virtuous acts depends on mind. The mind is the master, and the body and speech are the servants. Because of the degree of the power of afflictive emotions controlled by the desire, hated, and so forth, we create non-virtuous acts, such as the 5 heinous karmas, the 5 close karmas, the 10 non-virtues, the breaking of vows, and samayas. It is non-virtue if we do these things ourselves. We ask others to do them for us, or we rejoice when these deeds are done by others. Not only that, when the mind is under the control of desire, hatred, and so forth, even if we hear, study, and practice the precious Dharma, we create non-virtue. These non-virtues are created by evil deeds. These non-virtues created by evil deeds will bring suffering and undesirable conditions. These non-virtues are created through conquering our enemies, protecting our relatives and friends, and protecting our own body and accumulating wealth. But we leave
These things behind when we face death. However, non-virtue will follow us like a shadow, life after life, and become a source of all sufferings. Therefore, it is very wise to purify all non-virtues we create before they bring the result. This purification, if we use the 4 powers, can be very effective. The 4 powers are remorse, antidote, resolve, and reliance. In the Vajrayana path, Vajrasattva meditation is a special practice for the purification of non-virtuous causes. So with confidence and without hesitation, enter into the Vajrasattva practice. Have sincere remorse for evil deeds. Confess them and resolve not to create more negative karma, even at the risk of one's life. Then take refuge, cultivate the mind of enlightenment, recite the mantra, and meditate on emptiness as the antidote and reliance.
Okay. So Michael, what do you think of the four powers?
I think they're a natural progression.
What are they?
Remorse, antidote, resolve, and reliance.
Okay. So we should memorize that. You know, make yourself a little card or something like that. And if you haven't already memorized it, it's one of the very important parts of the foundation of what this philosophy is about. And we should commit this to memory. And not only just the words, but what they mean. So what does the remorse mean? Michael?
I imagine it means sincere and truthful regret with a commitment to try not to do what we done before.
So is this an intellectual thing, or is this a physical thing, or is this a spiritual thing?
I don't think any of this, from my opinion, I don't think any of these powers would work without all of those components.
Okay, right.
I mean, the intellect doesn't work without the body, and none of it ticks without the spirit.
Right. So then, Adrian, and what is the next part? You know, we have remorse, we have regret for something that happened physically, intellectually, or spiritually. Now, what do we do next? Adrian?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, actually, I don't. I thought I had that with me here. Okay, so what was the next? The regret.
So if something happens and you have remorse, then what's the next step? What do you want to do? You admit regret, you admit remorse. What's the next step?
Right. I think it's a commitment, like not to engage in those actions again, I would say.
Okay. So how do we know how to do that? What is that? What is the formula?
Well, I think it's in the first place awareness, so that you know at all times what you're engaging in, right? And then taking the action is not to, commit those acts again.
All right. So you have a resolve
Hmm.
not to do it again.
I would say so.
Okay. And then how is it that you not do that again? You know, what's the technique that we use to avoid doing that again?
I guess it depends what it was, right?
But
So,
isn't there a term that we can apply, that we can use to say, okay, I've gotten sick.
mhm,
Now, what do I do when I get sick?
it depends on what kind of illness you have, right?
Okay, Gary?
It's healing or atonement.
Well, the word I'm looking for is remedy or antidote.
Right.
You know, we've gotten sick and we go to the drugstore and we go to the proper counter or get the prescription from the doctor for the remedy to the malady that I've created for myself.
Right. Right.
Okay.
But
To
again,
neutralize the poison.
To
I guess-
neutralize the poison.
I guess that antidote would be specific to the type of act that you're engaging in, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And then what do we do next? So if there's 4 powers, We just identified three. What's the fourth power? And I know you're at a disadvantage because you don't have the text in front of you.
Mhm.
But there is the remorse, or rather, there's a remorse, there's the resolve, there's the remedy, and then there's one more. How do we protect ourselves from doing it again?
I guess it's engaging in the practice and developing those good habits.
Right. So there's the reliance on the practice.
Oh, there we go.
The reliance on the practice to both help heal us, to overcome, that suffering that we've created, and then to protect us, from going forward, from not falling prey to it yet again.
Right, right.
But just saying that doesn't make it so. In other words, we're more likely than not to do the same thing over and over again until we learn the lessons really well, until we learn the four powers and practice the four powers really well. And then we can say that we have been going through the increasing purification of the practice to be able to do that. So going back to one of the things that we talked about a few minutes ago was to say that one of the things that we're doing is we're replacing thoughts. We're replacing mundane, everyday thoughts that lead us to suffering and to confusion, emotions and everything. We're replacing those thoughts with wholesome thoughts now. And there's a process to do that. And the process is the purification process of remorse, remedy, remorse, resolve not to do it again, remedy, and reliance on the practice. So being mindful of this. And then we can say that this is what's putting us onto the path to become Vajrasattva, the holy, indestructible, holy being. The indestructible, holy being. Vajrasattva. Vajra means indestructible. Sat is a being, and Sattva, Va, is a holy being, the indestructible holy being. So Vajrasattva is one of those aspects of our Buddha nature that characterizes, that represents that activity of purification. Okay. You see how I'm trying to build? Can you see what we're trying to do here?
Build the process.
The process. And being aware of the process, yes.
Yes.
And being mindful of it, being able to reconstruct it in our meditative state or in our contemplative state. And then we exhaust that to the point, well, I've reached that point, and now you like basking in the sunshine of it, in the glory of it, in the heat of it. You've like ignited the sun, and now you're just radiating that light. Okay. All right. So how about, Michael, how about reading the short refuge prayer 3 times, and then Adrian, you read the four immeasurables 3 times, please.
With Tibetan.
Yeah, whichever you like.
Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chognamla. Changchu Bardu Dagmi Kapsuchi. Dagi Jinsok Yipe Sonam Ki. Rola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho.
The four immeasurables.
Yes.
May all mothers of human beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of sorrow. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mothers of human beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadanyam pesem chentam chende wadam yewe yudam jente para jura che. Dugnala jiju dang dralwara jura che. Dugnala me pede wadam mi dralwara jura che. Ering chandang nidang dralwe tan nyamla me para jura che.
Okay. All right, Gary. Will you read page 5 and the first sentence in page 6, please?
Above the crown of my head, I visualize a white lotus with a moon disk seat. On this is the syllable hung, which transforms into a Vajra dorje with a hung in its center. On this hung, light radiates. From this hung, light radiates, purifying the obscurations of all beings. This light is offered to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The light returns and dissolves into the two-syllable hung. The hung then transforms into the Dorje Sempa, who is in essence our own kind root Lama. Dorje Sempa is white in color and holds a Dorje and bell. He sits gracefully in the half lotus position. He wears silken robes and all the precious ornaments.
Okay. Does everybody have this illustration that I sent to everybody?
I have it. I just have to find it. I just had it in my hand today.
I can bring it up on a screen.
I'm certain that I have it. My mistake was organizing things today.
Now I gotta find it. That's not it. Here it is. Okay. So I hope everybody can see this. So let's go. So go back to page 5. So can anybody talk us through, maybe Curtis, your turn. Can you talk us through each sentence here and relate it to this picture?
I'm on my phone. I haven't got it on my laptop, so I'm not going to be able to see it to be able to do that.
Okay. All right. Michael, do you have your copy of that?
Can you put it in the chat room, Lance? I'll be set up if you can do that.
I put it in the chat room. Let me see. How do I do that?
Double click on the thing that says file when you open up the chat box.
So what? I got to copy that?
No, if you double click on the file, then you find the file and you double click on it and it posts.
That. So I go file. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know. I've never done that before, so I don't know. Oh, here we go. Maybe this is it.
Nifty little thing you can do when you earn it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm showing my inability to be able to do this. All right, never mind. All right, well, we'll just read this and it'll be what it is. So the idea of this picture is to help us to stabilize our visualization of this. So looking at the picture helps us to tell the story. You know, so it shows at the bottom of the picture, it shows us sitting there as an ordinary person, a meditator. You know, we're sitting flat on the ground. There's no pedestal or anything like this. And we're sitting there with a head of hair, and we visualize it on the crown of our head is a Vajra on a lotus pedestal right here above the head on a moon disk. And on this is the syllable hung. So above this is the syllable hung, which transforms into a Vajra with a hung in its center. And this goes out to all beings. So you can see that on the right side and the left side are all the ordinary beings and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And all this is converging within ourselves. And it says the light returns and dissolves into the seed syllable hung, which is at our heart, and transforms into Dorje Sempa. So in the center of the picture is Dorje Sempa as Vajrasattva, who is in essence our own kind root Lama. So we visualize that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are all interchangeable between us and all the Lamas and all the enlightened ones. It's all interchangeable. So in this case, we're seeing that Vajrasattva, Dorje Sempa, is the same as our root Lama. And our root Lama is the one who is teaching us. Dorje Sempa is white in color and holds a dorje and a bell. He sits gracefully in the half lotus position, and he wears a silken robe and precious ornaments. So, you know, you've got pictures of Dorje Sempa in the card pack that I gave you. And so to be able to utilize these things as tools to be able to stabilize your practice. So it helps us to remember. It helps us to make contact with our eyes, to make contact with our brain, to make contact with our heart. So we're using our body, our speech, and our mind. The speech being, characteristic, being an example, symbolic of our intellect. So we're using our body, speech, and mind. So we're visualizing this, and now we pay homage. Now we're paying homage. We're making offerings. So, Curtis, you want to lead us into the offerings, please?
You're on mute, Curtis.
I have to. I have to find the document. Oh, I had it, now I just lost it. So let's get somebody else do it until I'm come back together.
Okay. All right, Michael.
All right. So the offering is Om Vajrasattva Saparani Sapari Varya Argam Pratitsa Soha.
All right, so let's go over the pronunciation a little bit. Not that I do it perfect, but Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Argam Pratitsa Soha. Go ahead. So Sapari Vara.
Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Argam Pratitsa Soha. Yeah, Argam. Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Pusham. No, Padyam.
Yes.
Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Pusham. Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Dupam. Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Alokam. Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Alokam. Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Gande. Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vara Nuite. Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Sapari Vari Shapta Pratsa Soha. Bing, 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 bing.
Okay. Thank you. So, Adrian, what do those offerings mean? What is each one?
So let's start with the first one. Argam. Is that right?
Yes.
I think I'm mixing some of them. I know most of them. So Argam is that water or no? Is that water?
Drinking water.
Drinking water. That's right.
So this is a pitcher. So we're pouring
Oh, that's right.
we're pouring water for our guest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Argam.
And who's our guest?
The deities, ourselves.
Okay, well, Vajrasattva in this case. Vajrasattva. Om Vajrasattva.
Vajrasattva.
And what does Sapariwara mean?
I'm not sure.
The retinue.
Right. Okay.
So the deity,
And the right.
in this case, is Vajrasattva and your retinue. Sapariwara means and your retinue.
Okay. So Argam, drinking water. Padyam is washing water. Is that right?
That's right.
Is that the bowl that?
Well, you're scooping up the water out of the bowl with your hands like a ladle.
Right.
Mhm.
So pushpe, and that is flowers. Or I see in some texts pushpam or pushpe.
Well, Pushpe would be the name of the Dakini, who is the Dakini Pushpe, who is offering the flowers. Pushpam would be the Sanskrit name for that.
Gotcha.
So
Dupe, and that means dupe means and that's very. Is the incense? Is that right?
that's right.
So Argam, Padyam, pushpe, dupe. Okay, that is light or candles.
Right.
Okay, that's perfume,
Yep. Scented water, Gandhe.
right? Gandhi. And then Noite is food,
Yes.
and Shabda Pratitsa is music.
Right. So what does this represent in music?
Drums.
Right. And this is when we would play the instruments if we have instruments. If we had the bell and the dorje, if we had the damaru, if we had the jolings, if we had the longhorns or the conch shell. So this is when everybody, the Sangha would be rejoicing that we're celebrating, we're rejoicing that we're all together doing this. Our guests are all together in our Buddha field because we're visualizing this Buddha field. Okay. So the picture, is that Buddha field. That's what I'm trying to characterize here. That this picture is the Buddha field. It's being created by us, by the ordinary being at the bottom, and the center is the deity, and all around is this Buddha field of all this all coming together.
So Lance, I'm not sure if I have that picture.
I know I mailed it to you.
Did?
I have it. I was looking at it today, but I have put it in an envelope.
And you got it with a picture of the yogi who was
Gotcha. Who is
this picture here.
beating the iron?
Yeah.
Picture, show that again.
Well, I do have that.
Yeah, I've got that right here. I know I have the other. I had it in my hand before practice.
So I know I'm putting you guys on the spot right now,
Good. That's good.
but
I know I'm failing.
we got to move, from just listening into practicing.
Perfect. I like to be on the spot. I have no ego. You can mob the floor of me, Lance, please.
Well, I'm not trying to do that on purpose by any means, or even figuratively, but just to create a little incentive, if you don't know these things, to spend some time knowing these things, and this is where the benefit is. We all want to do the high practices. How the hell are you going to do the high practices if you can't do the low practices? These are the basic practices. Jigden Sumgun said, these are the most important practices. Forget the high practices. These are the most important ones. If you're going to build a house, you want to build it on a substantial foundation. And this is the foundation of your practice. Okay. All right, so let me see. So we were with Adrian, so we go back to Gary. All right, so Gary, now we come to the praise at the end of the page 6. So will you recite that, please?
Yes. Dorje Simpa Simpa Che, Dorje Deshin Sheg Pakun. Vajra Mahasattva, the great mind, the embodiment of all the Buddhas.
And next page.
Dorje Danpo, Kuntu Song, Chagsao Chagna Dorje La Wo. The Samattabhadra, Dharmakaya, prostrate to the holder of the Vajra.
Okay, so that's the praise. So those 2 lines are the praise. Vajrasattva, Mahasattva, the great mind, the embodiment of all the Buddhas, the Samattabhadra, Dharmakaya, I prostrate to the holder of the Vajra. So we have, this is visualizing and making the offerings and reciting the praise. So very important part, it's part of the ritual. It's part of creating and maintaining the mind stream. So what's another name for Samattabhadra? What does Samattabhadra mean?
Dharmakaya.
Yes. So there's also another name that we use most all the time. Here we're using Samattabhadra, but there's also another name for Samattabhadra. And what is that name?
Kuntu Zangpa.
Vajrasattva.
I'm sorry. Michael,
Kuntu
what'd you say?
Zangpa.
Michael, what'd you say?
Said Vajrasattva.
No.
No.
Curtis, what did you say?
Kuntu Zangpa.
Kuntu Zangpo is his Tibetan name. That's true. Yep.
Oh, you want Vajradhara?
Vajradhara.
Vajradhara.
Vajradhara. So Samattabhadra is always pictured as being naked with a blue body. And most of the time he's got his consort who has got a white body and they're in union, but they're both naked. And they represent the Dharmakaya, no question, But also is Vajradhara, who is wearing robes and who is in the Sambhogagaya form, who's wearing the robes. He's got a tiara, he's got, the headdress, and sometimes he's by himself, sometimes he's with his consort. Both of them have the bell and dorje like this, and they're holding the consort, in his arms like that. And he has a blue body also, but he's wearing robes. And that's how we differentiate them. So they both mean Dharmakaya, but Vajradhara represents the Dharmakaya in Sambhogagaya form. So we're going to be talking about the 3 vehicles. Well, never mind. I'm sorry. I got off on the wrong site there. But we've talked about that many times. So, and Vajradhara is Dorje Dorje Chang. When we say the prayers, we say Dorje Chang. Yeah, Curtis.
Something it's kind of technical, but I'm curious about it. For example, when you see Samattabhadra, the primordial Buddha with consort, is it she's wisdom and he's compassion or method? Is it fair to say she's Dharmakaya, he's Sambhogakaya?
No.
So together they represent the Dharmakaya.
They are the union of loving kindness, of wisdom, and method. They are the union of that. They are the inseparable union.
But
So they have transcended the dualistic nature.
And that's the Dharmakaya.
That's the Dharmakaya, the transcendence of the dualistic nature.
I thought the emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, that's the Dharmakaya.
To understand Dharmakaya, or rather emptiness, abides within Dharmakaya. The emptiness is the nature of Sambhogakaya.
Emptiness is the nature of Sambhogakaya.
Yes. The nature of Dharmakaya is non-conceptual. These are good questions.
I thought the nature of Dharmakaya was emptiness.
Emptiness is within Dharmakaya.
But it's not the nature of Dharmakaya.
From whose point of view?
I just thought the Dharmakaya was, or so to speak, is emptiness.
Dharmakaya is beyond conception. What is emptiness? Is emptiness
Beyond
a concept? Is emptiness a concept?
Yes, but it's beyond the emptiness that it's what is emptiness is the name for that which is beyond concept.
Well, then it's a concept. How can you have a name of something that's non-conceptual?
Well, it's empty of all duality, empty of all condition. That's why the term emptiness is used.
This is why we practice, to get to that point of being able to see it from the side of the Buddha. We're seeing it from the human being side. We're seeing it from the relative side, from the phenomenal side.
Where emptiness is form and form is emptiness.
Right. To let go of those expressions. We're getting down to the very subtle levels now of wisdom obscuration. Remember, what are the two obscurations? We talk about the two obscurations all the time in the prayers and in the practices. What are the two obscurations? Anybody?
Ignorance got to be one, I think.
The afflictive emotions altogether is one of the obscurations, the afflictive emotions. And the other is wisdom obscuration, the obscuration of wisdom awareness, the obscuration of wisdom cognizance, the obscuration of thinking that we know. that our wisdom, that the human wisdom is capable of knowing that which is beyond human capability. So it's one thing to, when we enter the path of the bhumis, of the 10 bhumis, we enter with the path of seeing the afflictive emotions, and at that point we have almost transcended the afflictive emotions. By the time we get to the 7th bhumi, we will then have purified the afflictive emotions. But what's left is the wisdom obscuration, is that wisdom that we need to be a human being. We need to be a bodhisattva. We need to let go of the arrogance of being a human being. We need to let go of emptiness as a concept, a defining concept for Dharmakaya. These are very subtle things. These are things, this is meditative contemplation. To be able to get to that rare point, to be able to try, get a glimpse of that. And as fast as we get a glimpse of it, it's gone. But we keep coming back and we get more glimpse. The glimpse becomes wider. The glimpse becomes deeper. The glimpse becomes a vision. We stabilize that. This is where the work is. This is what the 4 preliminary practices are about. How can you get to Mahamudra if you can't deal with these things? We're trying to intellectualize, but intellectualizing is only a small part of what we're trying to do. And what's the result? The result is liberation. The result is the bodhisattva mind, and then the enlightened mind of the Buddha, the fully enlightened mind of the Buddha. Okay, so I was making the differentiation there about, we were talking about emptiness, we were talking about Dharmakaya. So Dharmakaya is non-conceptual. And then its radiation, its radiance, its light, its heat is the Sambhogagaya and the Nirmanakaya, is the relative, is the phenomenal. And this is what we can perceive. This is what we recognize as ordinary human beings. But we take that, we process that, and then we see, and then we transcend the dualism that is implicit in that phenomenal nature.
Explain Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya just one more time, please.
I'll say it many times. Sambhogagaya is the subtle enjoyment body. You have my permission to get a tattoo. It says that. Because you come back to it over and over again. What does it mean? What does it mean? Subtle enjoyment body. It's subtle because it's so rare. You know, it's so hard to grasp. It's so hard to keep in our mind, you know, in our contemplation. And we enjoy it so much because here is where all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are. This is where all the meditational deities are. This is where the deity yoga is in the Sambhogagaya. This is all the deities in the indestructible diamond jewel that is our true nature. And it's so enjoyable when we start realizing this. Oh, I'm Amitabha. Oh, I'm Ratnasambhava. Oh, I'm Shenreze. you begin to see yourself as all these. That's why it's enjoyable and it's so subtle. And the Nirmanakaya is then when you are able to embody that and be there and be able to communicate that not only to yourself, but to other beings, that they can see you, they can hear you. You can hear and see the teachers. Buddha Shakyamuni, the Buddha, was in Nirmanakaya form. And he was teaching us in Nirmanakaya form. He had a human body, but he didn't have to have a human body. He could have been a horse. And for those who needed that teaching as him as a horse might have realized that. But the point is that it is the emanation body of the Dharmakaya. The Nirmanakaya is the emanation body, and the Sambhogakaya is the subtle enjoyment body. So the emanation of that truth body, the Dharmakaya, is radiating this light, these appearances, so that we can recognize and be able to hear and see and touch and smell and taste the teacher, the Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya, to say it another way, the Dharmakaya is the truth body, which is non-conceptual. It radiates into the subtle enjoyment body and into the Nirmanakaya body. So write it down. And these are another piece of paper that you should have in your pocket all the time. And when you're driving along thinking about it, you say, now, what was the Nirmanakaya? Oh, it's the emanation body, right? And who's that? Who's an example of that? Well, Shakyamuni Buddha. But we could also say that His Holiness is a representative of that. Shetseng Rinpoche. We could say that Garchen Rinpoche is characteristic of that. That we are characteristic of that. Maybe for a space and time, we become the embodiment of that Nirmanakaya. We can see that. We're that pure for that moment. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Okay. So I prostrate to the holder of the Vajra, and the Vajra here is the indestructible wisdom. That indestructible wisdom. That the embodiment of that. I prostrate to the holder of the Vajra, the indestructible wisdom, who is Samantabhadra. So pure that he's unborn. Okay. So then, who's next? Curtis, do you have your text back again?
Yes, I do.
All right. Will you read the next lines on page 7, please?
Does it begin with the praise?
On
Yeah,
page
the
7, it begins with all Dorje Sempa's heart at Dorje Sempa's heart level.
Okay. At Dorje Sempa's heart level is a Dorje on a moon disc. At the center of the Dorje as a hung syllable, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. The radiating light from the rotating mantra completely purifies the obscurations of all beings, and they become Dorje Sempas.
Go ahead.
The light returns and dissolves into the mantra and the seed syllable hum. Nectar produced from these syllables flows through the right great toe of Dorje Sempa. It enters the crown of my head, purifying all defilements, illness, and obscurations through the pores of the skin and 2 lower openings of my body. These obscurations leave the body in the form of a smoky dark liquid. Then I'm filled with nectar and completely purified as crystal.
Okay, so let's go back. And so go back to the picture, if you have the picture. So here it says at Dorje Sempa's heart level. So I don't know if you can see this image or not, but in the center of the picture is Dorje Sempa Vajrasattva. And at his heart is a Dorje, which is the Vajra, at the moon, on a moon disk. At the center of the Dorje is a hung syllable, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. So we have to visualize. So around here, around the being, around the ordinary being at the bottom, you see the mantra going around in a clockwise direction here. So you got to visualize that this mantra begins with Vajrasattva. The light radiating from the rotating mantra completely purifies the obscurations of all beings, and they become Dorje Sempas. So here, this light, you see this ray of light, this channel of light here, going out to the ordinary beings and going out to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas on the left side of the picture as we look at it. And then the light returns and dissolves into the mantra and the seed syllable hung at Vajrasattva, and then nectar produced from these syllables flows through the great right toe of Dorje Sempa, fills his body, this nectar, and then flows in through his right toe, which is on the top of our head, and fills our body with the nectar, forcing out all the defilements, all the negativity, all the darkness, all the poisons are forced out because of this nectar coming in through the crown of our head. And then it exits through the lower pores of our body. It goes out through our urethra. It goes out through the anus. It goes out through our big toe. It goes out through the pores of the skin, figuratively, and goes out. And then our body becomes full of this purifying nectar. It enters the crown of my head, purifying all defilements, illness, and obscurations through the pores of the skin and two lower openings of my body. These obscurations leave the body in the form of a smoky, dark liquid. Then I am filled with nectar and completely purified as crystal. So this is the visualization of when we're doing this practice, that we're sitting here on the cushion and Vajrasattva is on our head, his right toes on on our crown. That nectar comes down, and then we become crystallized with that nectar, purified. All the atoms and electrons are all lined up perfectly, like crystals. And then we recite the mantra, Om Vajrasattva Samaya, etc. And that's the mantra of Vajrasattva. So going back to the picture again, that's the mantra that is going around us here at the bottom, the ordinary being at the bottom. That's the mantra going around. That's the mantra garland that is generating this white light that is going into all these beings and so on. So it takes us a while to stabilize that visualization. First, we have to stabilize the mantra, to get the mantra right, get the melody right. And then it kind of starts happening automatically. And then we start visualizing Vajrasattva in our head. We begin to visualize that whole picture, put that whole picture together, and we're in the picture. The picture is within us. And then we become Vajrasattva, and that mantra is going around. So this is why we do this. If we had the prayer wheel, but if you've got the Vajra like this, and you're going around in a clockwise direction, it helps us to visualize that mantra garland that is going around to all those beings and coming back to us. And it's circling around the hung at the center, at the heart center. So we're visualizing that this is in our center of our body, and this Vajra is symbolizing the rays of that mantra going out in all directions, the mantra garland. So it takes us a while to stabilize that. You know, the first mile around, we're still trying to get it all together. But that's why we do 2 or 3 or 4 mile rounds. And it takes time, you know, to do a whole mile around. If I'm doing a whole mile around as fast as I can, it still takes me 25 minutes. You know, so we budget our time. We say, okay, I'm going to do 25, or I'm going to do 50, or whatever you can, or I'm going to do 2 mile rounds or 3 mile rounds. And the more you do, the more stabilized it becomes, the more transformative it becomes. And you see the benefits. If you can't do this, how can you expect to do any of the other higher yoga tantras? It's impossible. You'll be crushed. I hate to put it in those kind of words, but it's true. So many people go into retreats, and inside of 30 days, there's a few that leave. In the next 30 days, there's a few more that leave. And by the end of the retreat, there's maybe only 4 or 5 or 6 that are left out of what might have started off as 20 or something like that. It's crushing if you're not prepared for it. And if you can't do these things, this is the preparation for those higher practices. This is the foundation. These are the inner foundations. The 4 outer foundations are the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. Taking refuge. And the 4 inner foundations are the Ngondro practice, the refuge and the purification and the mandala offering and the guru yoga. So any questions? Comments? Am I being too hard?
No, absolutely not. Lance, I think this are the pictures that I've gotten.
That's it.
The picture of the yogi. This is the
Oh, no.
This is the refuge practice, right? The refuge tree.
That's right. That's the wish fulfilling tree. About 3 weeks ago, I sent it to you.
You're talking about this?
Yep.
No,
Came in a large manila envelope.
Yes.
3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Mhm.
Wasn't it about 3 weeks ago, Gary?
Yes, it was. I keep organizing things so I can find them, and that's fatal for me.
Yeah. And I wish you guys would keep them together, you know?
Yeah, and I do keep everything that you sent me together. I looked through all this stuff that I've
Well,
got.
I know everybody else got it. I know I sent it to you.
Yeah, I have the Ngondro refuge practice. I have 2 copies of it. I don't have the purification practice,
Okay.
which I don't know. It's weird. I'll keep looking, but I looked through everything.
There's an unopened envelope, I'm sure.
I'll check again. Hope not.
Okay. Well, if you can't find it, I'll send it to you again because you should have it. You know, it's important stuff. You do have the small picture of the mantra garland in your card pack. You've got that. So you can start with that to do this practice.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I do have that.
Now the Vajrasattva practice,
Was sent by WhatsApp, I think.
yeah, that was digital format because I had to print and cut mine.
Well, that may be true, but
So
those
you're
pictures,
so you're
pictures
talking-
I sent in a manila envelope.
uh-huh.
Yeah, I got the thing in the manila envelope, Lance, the thing you're using tonight.
You got 2 of them. Aren't you
Yeah.
lucky?
Maybe I have Adrian's.
Unlikely.
How would that have happened?
I don't know. Somebody had to send him.
Those crazy monks.
Well, I can send this extra copy to Adrian.
Well, if you could do that, that might not be a bad idea.
Adrian, you want to send me your address in some semi-permanent way,
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
chat or something?
So you had, I know I sent two of them to Bonnie and
What's the name? William.
William, Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah,
It's either William and Mary or
a
Bonnie
flattering
and Clyde.
comparison.
I mean, yes, Bonnie and William or Bhavani and Shankara. You
Yeah,
can also say Bhavani and William or Shankara and Bonnie.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a little confusing.
Yeah.
What comes out of my mouth.
Okay. Well, let's finish this up. So, whose turn is it to read? I've lost track. I think it was Adrian read last. Is that right? Or
I think we're ready to do the 100-syllable mantra a little.
all right. Well, let's do three recitations. All right. So we'll do it with the melody. All right. Everybody got the text in front of them?
Yeah.
Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Jistadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. And the translation for that is in the red book in the part of the refuge prostration part. The translation is there. And the translation is also on the back of the meditation card pack that you have. So you should memorize both the Sanskrit, as we just recited, and the English, the meaning of it. Okay. All right. So, Gary, I've lost track of who is reciting what, but Gary, you do page 10, please.
Just a moment, please. Okay. I and all sentient beings deluded by our ignorance have broken the vows. O Lama, Dorje Sempa, the protector, holder of the Vajra, Lord of all sentient beings, please protect us. Dorje Sempa is pleased with our prayers and replies, your delusions are now cleared away and you are purified. Dorje Sempa then dissolves into life and is absorbed into myself through the top of my head. I then become Dorje Sempa. Meditate on the union of appearance and emptiness.
So the Sambhogaya form of Vajrasattva, Dorje Sempa, appearance and emptiness. It's like a mirage, illusory body. He's there, but he's not there. That's Sambhogaya. So, yes, was somebody going to say something?
I was going to read.
Okay, please.
Through the virtue of this practice, may I achieve Dorje Sempa's great realization. To this state, may I come to lead every being, not one left behind.
So this is our dedication. This is the dedication. So, and we should really recite this with our heart. And this particular dedication is repeated in all the different deity yoga practices we do. The only difference is in the second line. If you look at the where it says, by the virtue of this practice, then it says, I achieved Dorje Sempa's great realization. But it might say, I achieved Green Tar's realization, or I received Medicine Buddha's realization. And then it says, to this state may I come to lead all beings, not one left behind. May I lead. So this is that we become the Nirmanakaya form, the emanation body of the truth body, of this Dharmakaya, that we ignite this Dharmakaya, that all beings recognize that all beings see that. And may I lead all beings to that state. So we should recite this in the Tibetan. Gewa di nor du dag, Dorje Sempa drub gurne, Jowa chikyang malupa, di salago pasho. So you begin to notice this in all the different deity yoga practices. Okay. Thank you very much for paying attention to this and practicing this. And I hope you feel a little bit more confident in doing these practices, you know. If you start off very smoothly, very shortly, you know, just do it for 15, 20 minutes, you know, just recite this, you know, 3, 7 times, whatever, you know, the 100-syllable mantra, you know, but you're establishing a routine, you're establishing familiarization, and it'll grow through your devotion. You're building devotion. If you don't do it, it won't happen. What else better do you have to do in your life? Okay, so Michael, will you do the first page 13 and 14, please, on the dedication prayers? Then Curtis after Michael.
Dorje Chang, Tulopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gampopa, Bagmondrupa, and Lord Drinkumpa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu-lamas. By this virtue may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death
Cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn may it arise, where it is born may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.
Curtis?
Next,
Curtis? Oh,
Keep going.
excuse me, Adrian, I'm sorry.
So,
Page 15. I pray that the Lama may have good health and long life.
is he with us?
I don't think Adrian doesn't have the text. I'm sorry. Okay, Gary.
I pray that the Lama may have good health and long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri and likewise Samatavadra realize the ultimate state, Buddhahood, I will follow in their path and share the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit.
Michael. Page 17.
by the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment.
May the teachings of the Draiter Kungpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara.
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May thoughts of fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, ah, Om. Om, ah, Om. Om, ah, Om. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Lance. Good night.
you're welcome.
Good night,
Tonight we
all.
got a really good film, Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds. I hope you can join us for that. You'll really enjoy it. And okay,
Thank you.
all righty. Any
Good night.
questions or comments? Don't hesitate to let me know.